Low ball in, Harry Wilson. Yeah! He's done it! Oh yes! Oh yes! Across the face of goal, headed in. Yeah! He's done it! What an introduction! Off you go!
Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast. You're here with me, Mark, today as your host. I'm subbing in. I'll be making sure that we go through the match, Fulham Palace FA Cup quarter-final in fine detail. But to help me get through this debacle, I have two stunning members of the Berentse family, starting with the Podfather himself in all his glory. Elton, how are things?
Well, don't ask me how I am, but I'm still struggling, to be honest. Great T-shirt for a grey day, but yeah. Look, I need to do this. I need to do this to hopefully come out the other end a happier human being.
I think that makes sense. It's going to be a cathartic experience. And to make sure we have a bit of levity in the proceedings, right? And to bring the entropy, much like Muniz did in the first half, we have Sam.
Hello. There's so much, but this weekend was too much. And I felt that I had to be here to bring up the vibe. And I know I've been away, but you know what? It's been one of those things where After Dark is kicking off. After Dark is really, really kicking off at the moment. And I've been like, that's fine because Fulham's also doing well, but then Fulham not doing well and After Dark kicking off, can't have it. So we're taking back the premium show. Shots fired. Hear me out, Skibby and Dave. But again, this is where, because we're going to bring you joy today. We're going to bring you some joy because otherwise it's going to be devastating. And we're all wearing grey because I enforced it. And I am happy to be here. This is probably where it peaks. But for now, I'm incredibly happy to be here with you, lovely people, and our lovely audience. Let's get locked in.
Let's do it. Thanks for that, Sam. Yes, we are wearing grey. Like a child, I am not wearing Fulham kit for the first time. So, kind of a little bit of a protest from me. But we're all matching like members of a cult. So That's cool. Speaking of, manufactured rivalries like our pod and After Dark, even though we all love each other as one big family, the oldest club in London versus the not oldest club in London. Yeah, that was, at least I was there at the stadium. The vibes were good. There was a million flags out. There were some pretty funny jokes on social media about that, given the color of the black and white flags and, the players on both sides. But going to pre-match rituals, I know you guys are watching it from Oz. Did you guys do anything different? Did you guys sort of celebrate or gear yourselves up in different ways for the match?
Oh, it's a very good question. Dad, do you want to lead on this?
Yeah, sure. But I don't have a very fancy answer. The answer is no. I just took my regular position on the sofa and unfortunately was incredibly optimistic and no is my answer.
Well, I had a shocker on Friday. I had like a massive headache. And then so Saturday, I got real excited about it. I was like, my boys are flying. We're going to do great. I watched Miss Congeniality to like prep me up for the mood. I got real excited. And then look, we can already start. Everyone was buzzing. That was awesome. I got super hyped for that. And then like, it was a great 20 minutes or so. It really was. And I'm going to hold on to that. I'm going to hold on to that for as long as I can.
I mean, you're bang on. We got to talk about the first 20 minutes. I mean, even in the first 2 minutes, the Muniz chance. And I want to circle back to this later because there is some commonality and there's some things we can discuss there. But what did you guys think? Do you guys think maybe he could have done a little bit better, or was it a pretty good move? Because you're right. We started really, really brightly. And what I liked about it, for those who maybe haven't quite seen the highlights yet, but Muniz gets a ball and he uses his strength. I think he shoves off Lacroix and then he dummies another center back. Is it Gahey? And he gets himself through on goal. But yeah, brilliant move. Love to see it. Love that individual bit of skill and aggression. But then he goes on the one-on-one against Henderson, doesn't quite land it. But do you feel like perhaps he should have done a little bit better or laid it off? I don't know. Talk me through your thoughts on the movement.
Look, I think fantastic opening effort, and it's exactly the kind of energy that I think we want to see from Muniz. That's what he brings. He did incredibly well to brush them aside. To be fair, Henderson actually had it covered. If you watch the replay, you'll see that even though Muniz pushes it a little wide, Henderson actually would have had it covered. So he'd have to have gone elevated a little bit to cause him some difficulty there at full stretch. But I wasn't annoyed. I thought, given the situation, he actually did quite well on his left foot. I think he did okay. Obviously, we would have loved him to put that away. It would have been limbs and crazy stuff, but not to be. But I still think he did well, and I thought he was really busy and energetic in those first 20 minutes. We could just talk about the first 20 minutes all of this time if you like.
I mean, I'm going to try to keep it as much in the first 20 minutes as I possibly can, like a kid in the kiddie pool. Like I'm just sitting there with my floaties, having a lovely time, and I'm scared of the deep end. Look, for me, I'm not Kish, so I'm not going to come on here and explain things in a logical way. I think purely emotionally because that's how I like to watch football. And I love how Muniz was so up for it. And it was so wonderful to see him really grab the game in those initial moments. It really just set up a really wonderful idea that there was going to be goals flying all over the place, and it was going to be this really wonderfully contested contest. We had so much hope, didn't we? We had a lot of hope because it looked great. It looked picturesque, and it looked like it looked like I'm always a little bit where I'm not sure about you guys, but I'm really conditioned now to be wary when Muniz starts. I quite like Jimenez starting, and if anything, I was a little bit more inclined to want Jimenez to start, but I got sucked up in the romanticism of the Samba Whites because it was like a full Brazilian pack starting, and that was really singing to me, and I got sucked up in the marketing of that. Now, we can always look back on this as geniuses in hindsight, but for those initial kind of moments, I thought Muniz actually did really, really well. And then as the game progressed, Palace just kind of figured him out and then just completely took him out of the game. But again, those first 20 minutes, weren't they wonderful?
Yeah, I mean, a great point. I mean, we know Raul had a stunning break, right? 4 goals in 2 games. You could argue he was the informed man. But I agree with you, and I think Muniz, like we've said it before, Muniz brings the physicality, he brings the chaos. We started Raul in our last match against Crystal Palace, and he was just completely bullied out of the game. So we needed someone stronger, and I think Marco took that on board. That's why Muniz started. Yeah, but you're right. He struggled as the game went on, and I think that's pretty fair to say. Yeah, I mean, they're just a really, really well-drilled defensive unit, Palace, like with their back 5, with Munoz running up and turning it into a back 4 in transition. It's really impressive what they've done. But we still can continue with the 20-minute theme. We had another great opportunity. Back to you, Sam. So we see the breakaway, and we see Bassi. I think we've had Cottage Tactical on before, and he's talked about this. And I think it was another YouTube video as well, saying how Bassi periodically runs up the flank, and it's really impressive. So I think Palace were perhaps caught a little bit unawares. Do you want to talk us through that moment and the layoff until AP and your thoughts about that whole movement?
I mean, I love whenever Bassi goes prime Rudiger because there will be a time where everything will actualize, and it will be probably one of the best moments of the last year, or probably be moment of the season when it comes off. I'm not necessarily tired of it happening because it is so impressive. And I think as an opposition, how do you prepare for that level of chaos? You just can't do it. And Bassi kind of just goes rogue in a way that I deeply appreciate. And it would have been amazing. I thought Bassi I know he got stung for that last goal for being offside, and I know we're jumping ahead, but I thought Bassi overall really had such a great game. And just in terms of like, it felt like he was really so invested, and it felt like he was trying so much harder than everybody else. And that's not necessarily a knock on everybody else. That's more of just like a nod to Bassi. And he was, I mean, but at the same time, if your centre back is your greatest creative presence on the pitch, it's not necessarily going to be the best. It's not the best foreshadowing, is it? So he was excellent, and I love when Bassi does this. But it's a bit concerning when it's just coming from Bassi. And again, once Bassi is the individual doing that, it kind of takes away a lot from the other pitch, because when you're down a defender, and yeah, it's my answer to your question is I don't know how I feel, but I love Calvin Bassi.
That's a good Sam answer. We'll take it.
You could have just said that.
So Bassi.
No. We need the narrative. We need the narrative, Dad. We're competing with After Dark. I need to bring my A game. Okay.
So running through the whole sequence again. So basically, I don't know if it's Willian. I'm pretty sure I probably should have better memory than this at 34. But I believe it's a 1-2 between Willian and Bassi. They're not expecting Bassi to keep going, right? Because he's a center back, like you said. And then he takes it, I guess, pretty close to the byline and lays it off to AP to shoot from outside the box. Now, I've checked the angle again. From the angle that the highlights were done, it actually looks pretty tricky, which I'll concede. Because where I'm in the Johnny Haynes stand, it looked like an open goal. So I don't know what angle you guys saw when AP took that shot. I felt in that moment, maybe I'm going to correct myself later, but I felt in that moment, if we had a younger Kearney or even Fabio Carvalho, that hits the back of the net. Oh. I think Henderson was a little bit off, and it didn't seem from my angle that there were too many defenders in the way. But Elton, what were your thoughts on that? Did you think that was a good opportunity, or was it actually just a pretty tricky one and AP did the best he could?
I'm resisting the easy path here to jump on AP. I didn't hate his performance like many people did yesterday. On average, I'm a fan, because I do think when he plays well, we play very, very well. He's generally he can be a really important player for us. Obviously, it's a consistency issue with AP. And, you know, this is the biggest story here is, I know we'll put a stats slide up a bit later to show what is really some shocking numbers in terms of our possession, the number of passes that we had versus Palace, and overall how much we controlled the game for so much of it. It's just so infuriating that we don't make the best of it, and we're just so not clinical. You know, back to the previous point about Bassi. I love the fact that he's getting forward occasionally to threaten and really tries best to bust through, catch people or the opposition unawares, and actually have a shot on goal. But we cannot be banking on Calvin Bassi to score goals other than from set pieces and headers, right? AP, something different, and he has been disappointing.
Did Dad say disappointing? Am I still here? Have I still lost everyone?
You are still here, Sam.
I'm still here.
Temporarily lost Elton. He should be back in a second.
I wasn't sure because you weren't speaking, and I thought I was in purgatory for a sec. So Andreas Pereira, look, I like Andreas a lot. I love the way I think he's actually got a really commanding presence on the pitch. But I kind of agree with when you've got an open goal, he's not necessarily the guy, is he?
Because he just hasn't scored enough.
and we're okay. So yeah, it's just you and me. It's just you and me.
Just us for now.
It's
But
cozy that way
don't
anyway.
worry.
His end result just really isn't there. He's actually pretty good from open play. I find sometimes he's actually okay in a one-on-one. We've seen it against Arsenal, and we've seen him be able to take control of a game and just have random moments of brilliance. But yesterday, and it's kind of indicative of a deeper problem with Andreas. Sometimes he can be that commanding presence, but he's not necessarily there when you need him. I think he kind of struggles with grace under pressure.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. I mean, I agree. He just doesn't seem very composed or consistent, right? Like, we see the talent, but being great 1 out of every 3 games is just not what I think a lot of the fans want and what Marco is aspiring to achieve in the future. Just regarding our before we move on to the next 70 minutes, as I see Steve Reynolds has thrown in the chat, after 20 minutes the writing was on the wall. It's pretty much true, and we have to address that soon. But the 2 moves, the thing that links them that I really wanted to address is when you have moments of individual brilliance, which I feel this team sometimes lacks, and when we play in an unpredictable manner, that's when we saw the Palace defense be really threatened, right? When we just did the usual attack by the left, give it to Robbo will do a cross. Chris Richards got his head on that 9 times out of 10. It was so predictable and boring and slow. And I think it's worth reiterating. That's kind of what I think a lot of the fan base wanted ESR to be that guy who can unpick defenses, to take on his man. That's what Wilson does sometimes. Maybe that's what Reece Nelson would have done as well. But once you do that, the well-structured defense, people get pulled out of place, right? And that opens up little pockets for late runners and things like that. So I really think, it's worth noting that we need to have more of those moments. I know we have plan A, and plan A sometimes works, but this match was pretty rough from a standpoint of our tactics versus the Palace tactics, and I think we really played into Glasner's hands there.
Dad or Mark, where does that come from, though? Like, I mean, are we saying we need a new signing? Are we saying that because we can't necessarily rely on like Nelson or Wilson at this current stage? So I mean, I remember Dave was saying in our like little personal chat that Josh King could be an option. I'm kind of with I think the majority, where I don't really think he's there yet. He could be. I could be proven wrong, but I understand the argument of we need to have creativity and some bombastic energy, but where does that actualize? You know.
Great point. I mean, I'll jump on very quickly.
We
have there's 2 ways I see it, and perhaps they're the same way in some people's eyes, but you can either take the player on and beat the structure that way, right? And create space that way, or you can have someone who can pick a pass. And I think our guys who can pick a pass are Kearney and Willian, but they don't really they have the vision and the technique to get there, but that is also reliant on other players reading that and being well drilled and knowing what to do so the pass can be played to them. In terms of someone beating someone one-on-one, yeah, probably King. I was hoping Adama would do more of that, just with pace, not even with trickery. Can just knock the ball forward and shove Mitchell to the ground, but we didn't see any of that yesterday, so that was deeply upsetting. But Elton, to you, do you have any thoughts on sort of how because I think as a team, we really struggle with low blocks. Everyone was saying it in the chat yesterday, right? We do well against the possession-heavy teams, the attacking teams, but against your Southamptons or your low block teams, we suffer.
This is, this is kind of what it's all about in the end. I mean, I always think that when a manager always appears to do his homework and is extremely well prepared, and I think Marco is really that guy. I just wonder whether the lack of bravery to actually play in that manner actually comes and starts with Silva, and whether he's actually somewhat to blame for us not having more ambition and running at defenders in a more direct manner. Because let's be honest, it can't be any. It just has to be coming from Marco to force us to play down the channels and use the overlaps with Robinson, and eventually Willian finds Robinson, cross comes in. I thought, if we're going to be critical, I thought Robinson's crossing yesterday was really subpar. It was so predictable. It was soft. I mean, we weren't getting on the end of anything at all, but neither were they really killer crosses coming in, which kind of brings me back to the story of, sure, Steve made a comment about the number of home goals that Andreas Pereira has scored in the last couple of years, and it's not many. His other shift partner, ESR, boy, I know we all want to stand off and not quite jump on the guy, but my level of frustration with that signing is really at boiling point.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
I'm so disappointed. I don't hate on the guy. I'm just so disappointed at what I think we were promised and what we can see from time to time, although those moments are pretty few and far between. But he's clearly a skillful footballer, but for so many reasons, he's way short of it at the moment. His performances are absolutely woeful. I mean, he had zero impact yesterday. And I appreciate that he came in off the bench, and that's not the easiest thing to do. And perhaps that's not his favourite way to participate in a game of football at all. But, boy, we've got some real problems with that signing. It just isn't working. And, in terms of the question about Josh King and whether he can play a role, I'm kind of frustrated that Marco doesn't seem to believe that Josh King can do something. I think we've seen enough. I really do. I think he's shown in the few little cameos that he's had that he can absolutely do it at this level. He's aggressive, he's direct, he's skillful, he's quick. He's got an inbuilt desire to chase down that second ball and win it. I think if we're not happy with AP, the more experienced campaigner, I would much rather be seeing Josh King than ESR in the 10. Give him a go.
Interesting. I kind of have a question. I think I have a question. I kind of cooked it and then I forgot halfway through, but I think I've got it again. So is Silva right? Because Steve in the chat has raised an interesting point, basically saying, asking if Silva has taken the club as far as it can possibly go, or as far as he can possibly go. His follow-up question just there is also like, has Silva reached the end? Which I think is actually a fair question. And it kind of comes down to what we're actually talking about, because I think the folly of when you are a manager that relies on a system, which I argue Silva is, and he actually buys players to facilitate within that system, as opposed to a manager that nurtures individual talent. I think you can potentially run at a loss once you get to a certain point, which is kind of what we're approaching now, where everyone is kind of locked into the fact that we attack through the left side. It's pretty easy to take out our strikers in the game, and they've seemed to have worked out Anderson and Bassi as well. And I know that if you can, it's pretty easy to actually pick apart our midfield as well. It's a really interesting question to both of you guys. Are we approaching the point where we might have to stop saying Marco Silva is a genius? Because I feel like he is. But I think we probably need more, because we probably need individuals that can actually carry us over. Because I think that's the only way you can actually transcend to the next level. And going back to my original kind of thing, ESR is a great example of somebody who needs to be nurtured, who needs to be brought up, and who needs to kind of find himself. Is Silva the guy to do it? I'm not entirely sure, but I'd like to hear you guys' takes.
Well, I think Silva has got a pretty good CV when it comes to redemption arcs.
Mm.
I mean, he's taken some players who he has believed in and he's turned them around. I don't think you can argue that.
No, but that's
I think
redemption.
the question,
That's not flourish.
but yeah, okay, all right. I think the question about Silva's fit and his competence and his glass ceiling, if you like, is you can't discuss this without the context of who his owner is, because I think Silva in a different club with an open checkbook or an aggressive checkbook, really backing the guy, probably ends in a different way. I think the difficulty is here. There have been so few key signings where Marco has sort of thrown the mini checkbook at it, and ESR is one of them, and it hasn't worked out. It certainly hasn't worked out yet. So it's very easy to scrutinise, but the sample size is small because how many big signings has Silva actually landed for us to be talking about? I think the problem we're all beginning to have with Marco is a level of frustration that he's great in preparing, but when it doesn't work out, there isn't a plan B, or the plan B isn't sufficiently different
from plan A.
So his intra-game reactions, are probably not as good as they can be. We see that in many ways. We see it in late substitutions, occasionally uninspiring or substitutions that lack bravery. I mean, all of this comes down to what are your options. It's if you're Pep, it's not difficult to dream up a couple of interesting substitutions because you've got a ridiculous bench and you can throw things at it. So I think Marco, for what he's trying to achieve and for where we are at the moment, I think his job is quite difficult because if he was the manager of Forest, I think he would have been doing at least as well, if not better, than and similarly, should he walk down the road to somewhere like Spurs, as woeful as they're doing right now, with the talent they've got, I think he'd probably be performing better. So I guess what I'm saying is that I think, sure, there are some potential shortcomings, but I think there are many, many, many managers that would struggle with the confinement of what it is to be a current Fulham manager.
Yeah, Mark, you are cooking something. You are like there is a bakery going on in your brain right now. I really want to know what you're working on.
Well said, Sam. Well said. Thank you. Elton's pretty much said it all. Yes, we have frustrations with Silva. Yes, he seems to be a plan A and then do plan A better kind of manager. And I think that only really works when you're working with the best talent, which we're lucky in that a very fully fit Robinson is probably one of the best talents. But it's so difficult to execute a plan that your opposition knows about and still succeed, right? And that's pretty much what Glasner did. Yeah, he's like, okay, we did this last time. Silva's probably going to attack through the left again. We'll just congest the left, and then here we are. I don't think it's fair to judge. I think two things hold him back. You mentioned the checkbook already. We haven't spent nearly enough, in my opinion. I'm pretty vociferous about this in the group chat, especially given the sale of Mitrovic, Polina, and even Stansfield. But the other thing is we can't really blame Silva for these lapses in concentration, right? Everton, 90th minute, Beto. West Ham, Danny Ings, 94th minute. That's not on Silva. That's on the players. It's on the players switching off. And our guys do work hard, but sometimes I just see a difference. When I see Forest players defend, and even when I saw Palace players defend yesterday, they threw their bodies on the line. And for us, that's more of a rarer occurrence. Then I don't see that same level of passion from the entire team when I'm watching Fulham, and that's pretty disappointing. But over to you, Sam.
Right, let's do what we all want to do. Let's trash Anderson for a little bit because I've defended Anderson for a while, and I quite like Anderson, and I still do like Anderson, and I do hope he comes good. But I feel that at some point I would really like us to get in a really neurotic defender who is constantly checking everything, who feels a little bit like they're everywhere. Bassey's kind of chaotically everywhere, like my nephew Miles, who literally just runs into a room just covered soaking wet in water, and just like he's just chaotic in the best possible way. Love him for it. But I feel that we need like a strategic brain in there, and I was really hopeful that was going to be Anderson, but he really gets. I'm going to call it. He gets really bloody lazy sometimes. And I think he really quite likes the idea that he's this mental tactician. He's very confident. He's very astute. He has an aura about him. But I think the confidence kind of is his folly, because I feel that sometimes he doesn't actually back it up with the credentials. If he doesn't, because he has a good partner in Bassey. But I feel that he also needs somebody who is equally tactically strong. And then I don't really know the partner that he needs, but I almost feel that Bassey needs the tree again that is Diop, because I don't really know what Anderson's doing aside from like putting in some pretty decent crossing. And I actually do rate him as a passer, and I do rate him as a long ball specialist. But as a defender, he's not really doing it for me. I don't know about you guys, though.
I've got plenty to say, Mark. Carry on.
Well, we do have to get back to the game eventually.
No, we don't. We do whatever we want. This is our show, Mark.
30 seconds on Anderson. I think that's a Silva choice. I think Silva likes the confidence, maybe misplaced, maybe overconfidence. He likes that. He likes the passing ability. We saw that with Tim Ream as well, right? We had Tosin Tosin kind of did it a little bit, but Tim was able to deploy those passes, and Anderson brings a cross-field approach, which we really should have used with Traore yesterday, but we didn't do that. But I completely get it, and I think if we're being very, very fair and very honest, as an opposition manager, who do I want to attack? Do I want to attack Bassey and Robinson, or do I want to attack Castagna and Anderson? It's pretty clear if you know our back four well, who you would go for, which side you would go for, depending on the attacking players you have at your disposal as well. But I agree. I think he's for what we paid for his fee. It's a bit of an out there opinion, but I wouldn't be appalled if we let him go to if Juventus put in a bid like they were rumored to do earlier in January. I'm pretty okay to let him go for flat if we can find a good backup, which we should be able to.
He used to be a shit stirrer as well. Like we always used to joke, he's Prince Charming from Shrek 2. He looks beautiful, but at the end he's just doing malicious things all the time, and he's getting away with it because he's got really nice hair. And he used to be really filthy when he was at Palace, and he seems to have kind of lost that. And without that, he's really not providing much, in my opinion. Dad, you have the floor.
I think this is all bullshit. I hear actually a lot of this noise on the Discord, on X, people jumping on Anderson. Yeah, you could argue that he made a mistake yesterday, which arguably led to a goal. But I actually think Mark made a very, very salient point here, in that not to dump on Tim Castagna, because he's really done a wonderful job for us. Without any backup at all. He's had a really difficult season, but he is not our best. He's not the best right back at the club. No. And we saw it a few times. Anderson alongside Kenny Tete is pretty spicy. He's pretty tasty. And I think it actually works very, very well. And we just haven't had the benefit of that all season. And I think what I think we have to be really careful of here as a club and a fan base is that in our frustration at opportunities like, a semi-final appearance at Wembley in the FA Cup, having slipped through our fingers against, pretty good but not unbeatable opposition. We're frustrated, and we're looking around the ground to try and sort of be pissed off with people that I think is a little bit unfair. The problem is we know how to hold the ball, we know how to pass the ball around. We just don't score enough goals, and that's actually the major problem. Sure, we leaked 3 goals yesterday, and arguably 2 of them were a bit soft. I think the third one, the game has just gone. The second one was definitely soft. The first one was a fantastic strike and a really, really good shot from Eze. But should he have been given that much space? Arguably not. Look, I'm not going to jump on. I'm not going to jump on Anderson. I still think he's a player, a centre back that I'd like to see in the club. I think we've got plenty of other problems than that.
Yeah, fair. I mean, now that you've touched on it, let's zoom through the goals, at least the first 2, and then we can touch on the second half. But Eze, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. He, in my opinion, is Palace's most dangerous player. Yeah. For what it's worth, Mateta was kind of a ghost yesterday, which arguably makes it worse, because it feels like a 10-man Palace beat us then. Because he was around, but he really, if you noticed, he didn't go for many headers. Every time the ball came in, probably because he was told not to do it, and I think he was wearing some sort of medical device as well to make sure his head's safe. But I only saw him do 1 or 2 headers yesterday. Anderson was cleaning that up pretty well from that perspective. But Eze is the one guy you don't want doing the Willian signature, come in from the wing, run outside the box and have a pop, because he has Willian's vision and skill, but he also still has pace. And the moment I was there and I was watching from the Johnny Haynes, the moment I saw Eze cut in, it's like, he's going to shoot. And lo and behold, 2 seconds later, it's in the back of the net. Anyway, we could have prevented that. Should we just show him to the outside every time? Or do you think Leno could have got his positioning better? Or, I mean, it was also really, really well hit and really well placed. What are you guys' thoughts?
I can concede individual brilliance. Do you know what? The sage mind in me said I can't blame Leno really at many points in the game, and I still think that's true, because I think he should have been shut down way earlier by Castagna. I for that goal, I'm going to give it to him. The other 2, I cannot be as kind, but because at that point as well, I still felt that we were in the game. So I kind of took that as a moment of individual brilliance. We'll get this back. But it wasn't to be. It wasn't to be.
Look, I'm going to take nothing away from that shot. No, I'm here. I'm going to take nothing away from that shot. It was very, very good. As to whether he should have had that much space, I was surprised that Lukic was that far away from him when he seemed to have a lot of time to set himself for that. So that was disappointing. But, we should know better and never, ever, ever give him that opportunity, because he will shoot from out there and he's very capable. So it's on us.
And just final notes on that. As a bitterly disappointed Fulham fan, and he was part of our youth setup, but slight bit of over celebration there from Eze. No, what do you guys feel? Right to our home fans, right in the corner, and I don't know, just like when Bassi scored, it was like 3 different celebrations.
Well, okay, to his credit, I'm pretty sure he also went through every other youth academy that the Premier League has to offer, as far as I'm aware, because I've heard him list off every single academy, and that boy jumps around like a marketing executive or some kind of like he was shopping. He was shopping very, very early on in his career, so I'll take that with a pinch of salt.
Fair enough. And then 4 minutes later, just as we were hoping to get back into it, I think he creates the whole thing as well down the flank. Very, very simple, easy move. Late run into the box. I wish we could do that. We've done that about once or twice this season. But a player I wasn't really tracking, one that I didn't really have on my radar as a threat, I believe it's Sarr comes in. He gets a header in. Yeah, that was a pretty rough one. You reckon we should do better there? Is anyone to blame, or is that just another pretty good move from Palace? Clinical, fast, not too much faffing around like we do whenever we get to those positions. We like to get there and then look and then eventually pass it backwards. But
well, that's the point. That's the point, isn't it? It's very easy to say, "Oh, poorly defended," but actually, as simple as the movement was, it was actually a pretty slick little goal. You know, it's still on Eze to put in a shit cross, and he doesn't. It's a great ball in, really. I mean, you could argue not we should have dealt with it, not that difficult, but it actually finds a man. The guy arrives in the box. Okay, Bassi has lost him, didn't even know where he was. It all seems like you could blame it on poor defending, but actually it's quite tidy from Palace. And if we scored that goal, we'd be delighted, but we don't. You know, so I kind of in two minds about saying that we just switched off. They actually did it very well. If we had scored that goal, we'd be delighted.
I think that's a very fair point, Elton. I think that's pretty reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah. For the sake of banter, I kind of want to argue that, but you've actually been quite astute. So I'm going to pay that one as well, begrudgingly. You've actually taken away some content, but we're already about 40 minutes, so I guess that's fine.
All right. We had a small resurgence, a lovely Willian shot, which I was hoping would go in, but Henderson he's a good goalkeeper. I'd say he's better than average, and so I would not expect, but yeah, I'd say I'd expect he should be getting to that, and he does, and it's a good save because I think it's a pretty quality shot from Willian as well. Was hoping that would work, and then let's talk about the scramble in the box from the corner, where it was just utter chaos. I could not believe how they kept that out. And once again, Bassi's at the heart of it. Yeah, I mean, should we do better there? Is that what we need, actually? Against a well-drilled, well-disciplined team, do we just need to create chaos? Just need to throw bodies in the box, make it disorganized? Go on, Sam.
I 100% agree with that. I 100% agree. Because I see it this way. I'm really into economics at the moment. I'm into my economics books, and I've already wasted Dad's time talking about this in private conversations. But I'm going to bring it to the wider masses. The thing that I love about economics is economics teaches you that you can look at previous data and you can make an informed judgment, but you can't actually predict anything that's going to happen. Now, if you're looking at previous data and then you just present with chaos that no one else was expecting, you kind of can ruffle some feathers, and then you can actually start to, in this scenario, play a really, really interesting game. I wish we did that because we played exactly like we thought that we should, and we didn't flourish in any way. We didn't make any risks aside from Bassi, bless him. Bassi, we can always rely on Bassi to just do something insane. And Pauline used to do stuff like that as well. But I would and sometimes we get it from Jimenez, even though it's way more frustrating, but sometimes we get it. And we need so much more of that across the park. Because in games like this, where the system isn't working, you have to just go for broke. And when we go for broke, it's pretty woeful.
Yeah. One thing I really like about Bassi as well, Mitro had this is not a hugely, insightful point, is he's so damn strong. There's one point where he just muscles Sarr off the ball, and then Sarr kind of piteously looks at the ref and raises his hand, and the ref's just like, play on. He did that with Romero as well, right? That strength, I think, is so useful inside the box. You can just body someone, and it's, so long as you get the ball, you got the ball, right? You just out-muscled them, so we need more 100%. Of that.
Yeah, back to your point again, Mark, really, really good point that, if you can't pick your way through, if you're not brave enough, if you don't have the confidence to run at the box and, draw players out of position and somehow make your way through, why not just just flood the box with a lot of bodies and put the ball in there, smash the ball in there, and see what happens. And I think, unfortunately, what happened with Bassi on the floor is it just didn't come off. He, it nearly came off. In another world, another universe, that comes off absolutely, because he's literally about a meter away from the goal line, and with every opportunity. But still, just a fortunate limb, even off a knee or a shin, sends that in, right? It's just unlucky. But if you can't break them down, why not go for a bit of chaos to really dishevel their very organized and disciplined defending?
I think that would have been a huge turning point had it been pulled off. I think it would have really rattled them severely. But alas, was not the case. Let's speed through the third goal. Eddie Nketiah comes on. He's the one they got from Arsenal. Congrats. They paid a big fee for him as well. He's actually been doing all right at Palace. I haven't really been keeping that many tabs on him, but he's started putting it in the back of the net for them. Once again, pretty smooth move. Seemed to hit us on the break. Gets in a one-on-one and slots it past Leno. But yeah, conscious of time. So any outstanding thoughts on their third goal, which really kind of, I think it was done at that point, wasn't it? All hope was pretty much lost.
So, Bassi played him onside. It's a really, really clean finish by Nketiah, to be fair to him. And I refuse to hate on Bassi for playing him onside, because I reckon by that point Bassi would have been knackered, because Bassi really played a game. Mm-hmm. That's my 2 cents on it. So I guess I can allow that goal as well. I thought we were going to have more discourse on this, but yeah, whatever.
Yeah, look, great piece of individual skill, good effort. I'm not going to try and undermine that. Unfortunately, the game is gone. I think we were in the mindset of trying to score goals, not defend them at that point, as ridiculous and naive as that sounds. But I think that makes you very vulnerable to being caught on the break. I think that's not that we're barely a fortress down that left-hand side channel for the opposition, or right-hand side for us. And I think part of that is the discussion we were half having about the Anderson and Castagna partnership, which I don't think is top shelf.
Yeah,
agreed. I guess let's move on to the stats. We can touch on that briefly before we jump on our Arsenal preview. But yeah, I think once they come up, you're going to find that we had a stunning 71% possession. Didn't seem to do a whole lot with it. So yeah, that was pretty painful, to Crystal Palace's 29%. One stat that I did look up, which was pretty interesting, was the XG. The XG was actually 1.9 for Fulham versus 2.4 for Palace. So Palace did, they should have scored more, which they did. But the 1.9 for Fulham was quite interesting. So it shows that, as we seemed quite wasteful, but we did have opportunities. And I need to look this up further, given the season we've had. But I feel like our team does underperform XG, whereas previous seasons we might have overperformed. So we're scoring a lot less than we should be scoring, which has got to be deeply frustrating for Silva and the data team behind Fulham. But yeah, we have the other stats on there now. 16 shots versus 8. However, 6 on target for Palace. So they were shooting them where they need to shoot them versus 3 for us. A whole bunch of passes from us, over double, over 600 passes that compared to the 263 of Palace. Fouls. This is. I feel this is relevant, so I want to touch on this a little bit. I thought Palace used their fouls so well. The few times we broke through, one that I remember clearly, Richards just takes a yellow immediately. Does Muniz from behind. Same with Wharton, maybe very, very early on. And Wharton is a whole nother talking point. Did a lot of fouls. Apparently there was a kick out as well. What did you guys think? Maybe not just on Wharton, but on overall the refereeing performance. We don't need to go into it too much, but and I thought Palace were clever with their tactical fouls. But did you feel the same, or should we be doing that more? Thoughts, opinions,
There's a bit
feelings?
of a theme. there's a bit of a theme here in terms of refereeing performance, or more particularly how we as a team ride those kind of variances in refereeing. I thought the referee yesterday was it was frustrating for me because I think he seemed to be sort of conscious of trying to let a cup tie flow, and he was letting a lot of stuff go. But I don't think we adapted to that very well, and I think they adapted to it better. And I think there are opportunities. There are times when that really went against us, and we just didn't react very well to it. And it's a massive part of the game that you kind of need to read the way the referee is going to interpret the game on this particular Saturday afternoon and make an adjustment to it. It's infuriating for the fans when the obvious things don't go your way. But as the game rolls on, as an experienced player, you should be looking at it and going, yeah, I can see what he's doing here. And providing it's consistent, you should be able to adapt to that. I don't think we do it very well. We're a bit literal. We expect the ones to be given that should be given. And when it doesn't go our way, we don't react very well.
We did have
adapt very well.
No, you're right. We did. I remember about a year and a half ago, or maybe it was about a year ago. It was when we definitely still had Polinia. But I remember the conversation was always, we have a discipline problem and this, that, and the other. And I always kind of just brushed it off because I actually quite liked us being an aggressive team. It goes kind of against the posh private school boy moniker that we hold so tightly to our hearts. But we've seemed to have really lost that. And I was really thinking that when I was actually watching the game, because I like Berger and Lukic in the midfield, but they're not necessarily enforcers, are they? I think Sander Berg is very, very strong. There's no doubt about that. But I don't find him as imposing as annoying as Lukic and Reed. And I think if teams know that they can completely outmuscle us, and as you said before, create these strategic fouls, because they kind of know that they can actually facilitate that, it does kind of put us in a bit of a vulnerable position. Basically, I kind of missed that, how there was a period where we were really able to rough teams up a little bit, so then teams didn't want to play us, and we seem to have kind of lost that. That was really prevalent last night for me. I don't know if you guys feel that way, though.
Yeah, I believe it was mentioned in the chat. Paulinho was huge for that, right? And I think that also has it has an effect on opposition teams in that they get frustrated. It's like, this guy is here again, and he's kicking the lumps out of me again, but he gets the ball, so he's not going to get yellow carded for it. I think it's deeply frustrating for the playmakers on the other side, like your Madisons. So that was Lukic that really irritated Madison and got him, riled up and not focusing on the game. But yeah, I think you're right in that we've probably lost something, and we don't foul as tactically as we should. And I saw that a few times from Palace, and it was so irritating to watch as a Fulham fan, because we finally get a movement going, and then the Palace player does just enough not to get a yellow, but enough to completely disrupt the movement. And then we get a free kick from the halfway line when the rest of the Palace defense is already reset. That is just logically not an advantage, right? We got fouled and we somehow ended up in a worse position than before we were fouled. So they were really clever at using that in a tactical and cynical way. We need to be better about that. I don't know whether we need to complain more, whether we need to pantomime villain more and fall over and try and get more yellows. Because I think when you're right, we need to read the game. And if the ref is just going to let it play, then we need to play a bit rougher and a bit dirtier. But if the ref is, if he's going to hand out cards, we need to make sure that the opposition team accumulates those yellows quicker, so they can't use those sort of delaying tactics to disrupt our moves going forward. But just thought it'd be a fun little thing to discuss.
It was. I had a lot of fun.
Very good. So let's wrap up, because we've already done 54 minutes. Let's wrap up with the Arsenal preview. I will admit I have a bunch of Gunners friends, but I don't really know the status of their team that well. I think Saka is back from injury, which isn't good news from us. A few people are still out. I think Tomiyasu is still out, but by and large, they've had a pretty good season. I think they're still sitting second. Pretty good bench as well. Obviously, they have really good players like Odegaard and Saliba and Gabriel at the back. But I don't know. What have you guys made of their? Do you guys have Gunners friends that you speak to, or what have you guys made of their season thus far?
I mean, I don't have Gunner friends just purely on principle, and the ones that I do know, I interact with them sparingly for that very reason. Yeah, look, they're a really formidable side at the minute. I think they've been really, really strong all season. I don't think they're gonna beat Liverpool. I think they've really kind of worked their way into this comfortable second place for the past 3 seasons. I don't really think they've got that killer instinct to actually make it to like the Premier League. Sorry, as in to actually win the Premier League. I'm tired. So I think that we can actually cause an upset there because we've done it quite a few times now. I think the game will be competitive because again we're in a bit of a wounded animal position. And we'll definitely have a different starting lineup. Like I think it's very, very likely that Jimenez will start straight off the bat. I reckon potentially Traore has probably earned a start just from the most recent game. I think Andreas will start as well, but I think that's also a benefit to Willian. I think it could be an interesting game. I don't think it's going to be a complete write-off. I actually think that we're going to be in it. But yeah, I don't necessarily fear this game at all. I think it's definitely going to be an interesting one. Can't really call it now, but I don't worry, if that makes sense. Maybe that's misplaced, but I don't worry.
Well, history says that Fulham generally does very well against the top sides who don't sit back and will aggressively come at us with a view to, winning and scoring a lot of goals. It suits this Fulham team to actually line up against those kinds of teams. But this is, make no bones about it, this is a really tough fixture 3 days after a fairly bruising defeat. You could argue that the 3-0 scoreline didn't really reflect how we performed in the game, but it was a gut punch nevertheless. And we're out of the cup. The fans are obviously disappointed. That leaks through to the dressing room, no matter how insulated you think everyone is.
Who is dying?
It's not me
Sorry.
sneezing.
Who is like? What
that's
happening?
my wife.
That's your wife. Wow. Oh my god. No,
Well,
you should pretend to her. Like we shouldn't be talking about Arsenal right now. That woman she's on death row.
I don't know how you thought that could be me, Sam. I'm speaking fluently. How could I be sneezing?
I thought it was mum. I thought it was mum in the background, and I was like, "Dad, say something. You're in a safe space." I could not draw attention to that. That was sorry. I'm sure she's a wonderful woman who's quite poorly right now. Mark, I'm sorry.
She's still going, which is the best bit.
So this is going to be really this is going to be really difficult. I think for all the tired legs in the Fulham camp, and I count Alex Iwobi in there, by the way, as well. We haven't touched on him,
so fair.
but I thought he's looking weary in the mind, in the legs. I'm not going to dump on him because he's been an incredible player for us this year, but he has dropped off a lot. Castagna, I mean, I feel sorry for the guy, and to turn out for a really tough game 3 days later, this is a very, very tough affair for us Tuesday.
I mean, I think you're right, and they're going to target that side, aren't they? Just like all the teams have done this season. And I think you're also right about Iwobi. Still plenty of credit in the bank, but just recently he's been off the boil, inconsistent, and I don't blame him. I'm not going to go back into the January thing because that's my favorite thing to gripe about. But really, we should have we should have better cover for him. We should be able to
Yeah.
take our starting wingers and at least give them a week off or even 2 weeks off to recover, to play substitute roles, and then to come back fresh. Right now, I think there's a lot of pressure on several elements of our starting 11 because there is no good backup. And you're right in that I don't think Willian will start. I think he's going to get torn a new one by a fresh Arsenal 11 if he starts. So he needs to be coming on as a sub. But I guess we'll wrap up with predictions. I'll kick it back to you, Sam. What do you reckon?
I don't know why. But I'm going 1-0 Fulham. I'm feeling that.
Strong. I like it. Who's the one coming from? Who wins us the match?
That's a great question, actually. Do you know what? It's going to be really boring, but I think it might be Jimenez. Off like a penalty or something bollocks like that.
Hey, a win's a win.
A win's a
3
win.
points. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Elton?
Jeez. My head says 2-0 Arsenal, but I'm feeling like we'd do something Fulhamish that actually goes in our favour. So I'm going to go 2-1 Fulham because we will get up for this game, and we're not good enough to keep Arsenal out and stop them from scoring. But I think we'll. I think we'll pull out something incredible like we always do against the top teams, and we'll score 2 goals.
Yeah, fair. I wish I was optimistic as you guys. I'm going to go 1-1. We really struggle to keep a clean sheet, so I don't see how we're going to keep out an Arsenal attack. But I'd love if we did. I also think it's going to be Jimenez. Something happens and falls his way, and he's gonna, I feel, be a little bit aggrieved that he had the best tournament of his life and then he was brought on as a substitute. So maybe we get a little bit more energy and a little bit more passion out of him. Not that he's not a passionate player, but I think he's really going to want to say to Silva, I want the extension. I want the extension confirmed, and I don't want to be the backup next season. I still want to start. So let's see how that plays off. With that, I think that was a good therapy session. We aired a lot of our grievances. We didn't let the gremlins come out too much, so that was pretty good. I think we were overall pretty positive and pretty happy. And we'll sign off there. So Sam, thank you so much for coming on board, sharing your wisdom, sharing your cheer.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm not sure what romantic comedy I'm going to watch next, but I cannot wait to share it with you and the wider community that we've built so deeply and so trustingly. Please join the Discord. We didn't do that earlier, but we're doing it now. So that's that. You can also give me points for that as well. I'm just facilitating today, but it's just. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure. You'll see me soon. I'm sorry. I have had other things going on. You guys know what it's like.
We understand, love, and forgive you, Sam. No problem.
Thank you.
And Elton, always a pleasure.
I thought you were about to launch into something quite differently then when you said, we understand love, we understand what you're going through, understand, but you didn't. But look, you know what? I'm actually surprisingly feeling better. I'm actually feeling better. I feel like my grey T-shirt has morphed into something different, even though no one's seeing the illusion. And thanks for the chat, guys. I enjoyed your insights. I enjoyed your humour. I enjoyed, just being here. It's good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Go away after dark. This is the flagship show. What's up?
And with that, we'll sign off. Thanks so much for joining, guys.
Go on, you ones.